Welcome to the Moonlight Shorts. This is the official audio home for the fiction of author Misty Hamilton Smith and the stories of Inkroot and Moonlight. From the surreal to the gritty, these tales explore every genre. Today's story is Total Blackout, a story of a woman in a house where the objects are moving on their own and the silence has started to take on a body of its own. Lena came home after dark, the kind of dark that settled early and stayed heavy. The porch light flickered when she stepped onto the boards. It had been doing that for months, but tonight the rhythm felt deliberate. The door resisted when she pushed it open with her shoulder, held against her weight for a moment, and then gave. Warm air pushed out into the cold night behind her. The grocery bags went on the counter, and she reached for the fridge door and stopped. The bills she had left face down and squared at the edges that morning were scattered across the counter. Turned over, some of them opened and refolded wrong. One by one, she gathered them up and set them back in a pile. She stood with her hand flat on top of the stack for a few moments, getting lost in memories of Jessie before she reached for the fridge. Tipper, her tabby, came around the corner from the hallway and stopped at the base of the bookshelf, sitting perfectly still, staring up at it the way cats stare at things that aren't there. After a moment, he seemed to lose interest and turned to go into the front room. And that was when Lena noticed the lamp was on and followed, leaving the groceries to wait. The cord lay on the floor with the plug 3 feet from the nearest outlet. She crouched slowly, picking it up. The plug must be loose, she thought, and pushed it back into the socket. The bulb burned the same steady, warm burn as normal. She stood there longer than she meant to, staring into the light. At some point, Tipper came back into the room and pushed his head against her ankle. She looked down at him, let go of the cord, and went back to the groceries. The fridge needed cleaning out from months of procrastinating. The items were piled in so tightly, she fought for a room putting the groceries away. Finally, she pushed aside the hot sauce Jessie had bought before he deplored that she kept meaning to throw out and never did, giving her enough room for the milk. Hunger was gnawing at her, so she decided chicken it was, grabbed a pan, and set it on the burner. She laid the chicken breast in it and quickly sprinkled seasoning on, not really paying attention to which or how much. Tipper wound around her ankles and cried, prompting her to open a can of his favorite food and set it on the floor. Once Tipper tucked in, the green beans got trimmed and dropped in the pot while the chicken fried. She stood at the stove until everything was ready, her thoughts drifting once again to all the things she wanted to do once Jessie was home. Once her meal was done, she sat down at the table. The chicken was juicy for once, and somewhere in the middle of it she noticed her cooking was improving because it didn't taste as bad as it normally did. The table got cleared, the dishes washed and dried. Most evenings ended with her book, and she went for it now out of habit, but it wasn't there. Her hand went flat on the table where she had left it that morning, before turning to look at the bookshelf. There it was, standing upright between 2 others, as though it had always been there. "Jessie," she muttered, and pulled it out. Only then came the reminder that Jessie was 4,000 miles away and had been for 8 months. The book stayed in her hands a moment longer before the sofa pulled her in. The page turned, but the words didn't land, so back it went to the top. Back a second time, and the book closed and found the cushion beside her. The book stayed beside her while she sat there a little longer, letting the room settle around her. Eventually she pushed herself up from the sofa and headed down the hall. She changed into her night clothes and went to the bathroom, picked up a toothbrush, and stopped. It sat on the left side of the sink. She kept it on the right and had for as long as she'd lived in this house. She set it back where it belonged, used it, rinsed, and reached for the hand towel. It had been refolded, the open edge tucked under in a way she never did. She hung it back the way she liked and turned off the light. Tipper, who always followed her down the hall at bedtime, sat in the bathroom doorway and wouldn't come in. She sat on the edge of the bed. Tipper jumped up beside her and pushed his head under her hand. She scratched behind his ears and looked at him. "I need a vacation," she told him. "I'm losing my mind, leaving my toothbrush on the wrong side of the sink, my book on the shelf, my bills all over the counter." Tipper blinked at her and kneaded the comforter a few times before settling. "I'll take that as agreement," she said, and reached over to turn off the bedside lamp. A sound reached her before she understood it, soft and deliberate, the kind of shift old wood makes when weight settles where it hadn't been a moment earlier. She reached across the comforter for Tipper and found only the dent where he had been lying. The warmth already fading, she laid still for a few moments and listened. She pushed back the covers and eased her legs off the bed until her feet touched the cold floor. She listened for another moment, then felt around with her foot for her slippers and padded out into the hall. "Tipper," she called, keeping her voice low the way you do in a house at night. "What are you breaking out there?" Tipper sat in the hallway outside the bathroom door, staring at the narrow strip of dark along the frame. She walked toward him, nudged him gently aside with her foot, and pushed the door open. The hinges gave their familiar creak. The toothbrush sat on the right side of the sink where she had put it, the hand towel hanging the way she had left it. She looked down at Tipper. "Shutting doors now?" she said. "Very helpful." He walked past her into the bathroom, sniffed the base of the toilet, and wandered back out again. She pulled the door open wide, left it that way, and went back to bed. Back in bed, she pulled the covers up and reached for Tipper, and found him curled at the foot of the mattress. His purr filled the quiet, steady enough to pull her toward sleep. The bedroom door eased toward its frame just as she drifted under, the latch clicking softly. Stillness held her there, eyes open to the narrow strip of hall visible through the gap. A shadow waited at the far end where the hall turned toward the kitchen, a shape that didn't belong, and she watched it until it resolved into nothing, the way shadows do when you look at them long enough. Only after another moment did she turn over and tell herself it was stress and too little sleep. 8 months alone in this house, giving her eyes reasons to invent company. She drifted in and out through the night, never quite landing on either side of sleep. When she did go under, she found Jesse there, not in any dramatic way. Just Jesse in the kitchen pouring his second coffee and sliding the mug across the counter to her without looking up. Jesse on the sofa with his boots off, reading the newspaper the way he still did even though she told him nobody read newspapers anymore. Jesse reaching past her on the bookshelf for a book and putting hers back in its place while he was at it, without even thinking about it. Each time the house settled or Tipper shifted at the foot of the bed, she surfaced again and reached across to Jesse's side and found the sheets cool and flat and lay there staring at the ceiling, until sleep pulled her back down to him again. The last time she surfaced, she propped herself up and looked at Tipper where he sat at the foot of the bed, watching the doorway. "Missing your daddy too?" she said. "Is that why you can't settle?" Tipper turned and looked at her, and then looked back at the doorway. "Don't worry," she told him, pulling the covers up. "A few more weeks, and he'll be home." The alarm dragged her up hard and fast. She slapped it off the bedside table and sat up with her pulse kicking hard in her throat. Her shin caught the corner of the dresser before she had taken a single step. Both hands went to the footboard as she looked down at the floor, at the old scrape marks sitting 2 inches behind where the legs now rested, the wood between them clean and unmarked. Getting it back took her full weight. The legs dragged across the floorboards with a groan that bounced off all 4 walls at once. She stood in the quiet after it until the legs sat right over the old marks. "Tipper, I swear, I must have slept through another small quake," she said to the empty room, then went to make coffee. The automatic coffee maker had already finished. Lena stopped in the doorway and looked at it, certain she'd forgotten to set it the night before. 2 mugs came down from the cabinet before she caught herself, and she stood there holding both until she put one back. Jesse's chair had moved, angled out from the table the way it sat when he pushed back from his coffee to get his boots. She must have clipped it on her way through, she told herself, still half asleep. Toast got made and eaten over the sink. Tipper watched from the counter while the coat went on. "Be good," she told him. "I'll see you after work." She locked the door behind her. The morning went sideways before 9. The phone rang while a couple stood at her desk arguing over their divorce hearing. She picked up the line with Callahan and Sons law firm. "How may I direct your call?" Then hit the wrong button and left Mr. Callahan's 11 o'clock listening to dead air for 2 minutes while the couple in front of her got louder. The second call she put on hold and forgot until the light blinked at her from across the desk. She was still trying to figure out how Mr. Callahan's 11 o'clock had become a 2 o'clock in the appointment book when Susan stopped at the desk, leaned on the counter, and looked at her. "Having a Monday?" Susan said. Lena looked up. "Something like that," she said, reaching for the phone. At 5 o'clock she straightened the appointment book, lined her pens up, and was reaching for her coat when Susan appeared at the desk. "A few of us are heading to Mulligan's," Susan said. "Come with us." Lena shook her head and pulled her coat on. "I'm fine, sus. Really?" Susan gave her the look she'd been giving her since the week Jessid deployed, that particular mix of worry and patience. "Besides," Lena added, picking up her bag, "Jessie's home in a few weeks. You can all stop worrying about me then." She squeezed Susan's arm and pushed through the glass door into the parking lot. She pulled into the driveway and left the engine running. Her bag stayed in her lap while she took out her phone and played the voicemail she'd been replaying for 2 months. The one he'd left on a Tuesday afternoon while she was elbowed deep in Mr. Callahan's filing. "Hey babe, just wanted to let you know that I'll be out of touch until this is done. Total blackout. Wish I could have caught you. I love you, Snuggie." She listened until it ended, sat a little longer after that, then dropped the phone into her bag, turned the engine off, and went inside. The kitchen door opened and she dropped her bag on the counter, shrugging off her coat. "Tipper," she called, waiting for the sound of him jumping down from wherever he'd been sleeping and padding toward her. Nothing. She found him in the front room, sitting at the base of the bookshelf the way he had the night before, perfectly still, staring up at it. "What is with you and that shelf?" she said. That was when she noticed the bedroom door standing open at the end of the hall, and through it the dresser angled toward the doorway, one corner pointed out like a finger. She walked down the hall into the bedroom with Tipper at her heels, stepped round the dresser, and pushed the window open. Evening air came in, cool and carrying the smell of rain somewhere off in the distance. Tipper jumped onto the sill beside her and sniffed the air. His head turned, ears forward, and the window came down. Not hard, not fast, just down, the latch turning over on its own with a small, precise click. Tipper dropped back to the floor and sat looking up at it. "That latch has needed replacing since before Jessie left," she told him. "I keep forgetting to call the landlord." Tipper bolted out of the bedroom and she followed him down the hall into the kitchen, where the light was already on. Jessie's chair sat angled out from the table, turned toward the path she walked every evening coming in from the back of the house, the same way it sat when he pushed back from his coffee to meet her at the door. The lamp was burning in the front room, the cord still lying on the floor 3 feet from the outlet. She looked from the chair to the lamp and then down at Tipper, who sat at her feet, looking up at her. "I really need to call an electrician," she said. She stayed there a moment longer, then looked down at Tipper again. "Come on then," she said. "Let's get us both fed." The fridge door swung open and the cold air hit her face. Leftover hamburgers sat on the second shelf. She took one out, set it in the microwave, and cracked a can for Tipper. He went straight to his bowl. She sat at the table with her plate and looked at the fridge while she ate, thinking she really needed to clean it out this weekend. Maybe Saturday. Maybe she'd make Jesse do it when he got home, since he was the one who could never throw anything away. The doorbell rang. She was not expecting anyone. The microwave clock read 7:42 when she pushed back from the table and walked to the door. The narrow window beside it showed a dark blue car at the curb. Government plates. 2 Marines stood on her porch, full dress uniform, hats in their hands. A ringing started in her ears before she touched the knob. Her hand found the door anyway and pulled it open. Cold evening air moved around her, and there they were, close enough to see the brass on their dress blues, hats held at their chests. Something left her body then, something that had been holding her upright. Her legs carried her as far as the sofa before they gave out, and she sat hard on the cushions. Tipper jumped up beside her, climbed into her lap, pressed his head against her chest, and stayed there. The older of the 2 men shifted his grip on the hat already held at his chest. "Mrs. Lena Hartley," he said. Whatever he said after that blurred together. Jesse's name reached her first, and then the word fallen, and then the time frame, 2 months, settling over everything she thought she knew. It meant he had been gone since the voicemail, since the blackout, since that Tuesday afternoon when she had been elbow deep in Mr. Callahan's filing and had missed his call. It meant the lamp coming on the night after, the book returning to the shelf, the chair turning toward the door the way it always turned when he was coming home. Had not been accidents or drafts or faulty wiring. He had been home all along. You have been listening to an original story by Misty Hamilton Smith. This piece was originally published on the Inkroot and Moonlight blog. To read the written version or to support the author, please follow the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening.